We haven't framed Maggie yet. Okay. A recent discovery of oil by Shell in the Orange Basin, followed by Thursday's announcement by Total Energies, has made the world sit up and take note of Namibia. An ongoing drilling campaign by Recon Energy Africa has also indicated that the Kavango Basin may hold significant quantities of oil. These developments, coupled with progressive developments with the Kudu gas field offshore Namibia, show that things are looking up for the oil and gas industry of the land of the brave. A very good evening and a warm welcome to tonight's edition of Talk of the Nation. My name is Denver Kisting and Maggie Kashina Munene is our sign language interpreter this evening. The question is, how much of a game changer is it for Namibia, and are we sure Namibians will directly benefit from these developments, what many describe as exciting? These and many more questions we will be asking and hoping to get answers from an esteemed panel of stakeholders. They are Mr. Emmanuel Mulunga, Managing Director of Namco. Good evening, sir, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Good evening, Denver. Thank you for inviting me to your show.
We're also joined this evening by Mr. Carlo McLeod, Deputy Director, Compliance and Regulations in the Ministry of Mines and Energy. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Good evening, Denver, and thank you for having me.
We're also joined this evening by Dr. Klaus Enderson, General Manager of BW Kudu. Good evening, Doc, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the invite.
Also joining us this evening is Mr. Craig Steinke, Executive Chairperson of the Recon Africa Board and founder of the company. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
And joining us virtually is Mr. NJ Ayuk, the Executive Chairman of the Africa Energy Chamber. Good evening, sir, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Now, before we get into this evening's discussion, let's take a look at the following insert of what transpired at the Africa Energy Week in November last year.
We've been very busy training our people, doing a lot of exploration activities in Namibia. So far, no luck, but we believe we are going to be the next country that will discover oil in Africa, absolutely no doubt.
This was the bold declaration by the Managing Director of the Namibia Petroleum Corporation of Namibia, Emmanuel Mulunga, at the Africa Energy Week hosted by the African Energy Chamber in Cape Town in November 2021. Mulunga was bullish in his optimism when he addressed a session on increasing production and investment in the energy transition world, and judging by the recent discoveries by Shell and Total Energies in the Orange Basin of southern Namibia. His optimism was far from misplaced. While the focus is shifting away from carbon, gas and coal to cleaner green energy, Africa is however adamant that African voices should take on the spotlight in the energy transition process. NJ Ayuk, the Executive Chairman of the African Energy Chamber, pointed out Africa will be unapologetic about the need for a just energy transition. South Africa's Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, Gwede Makase, echoed similar sentiments, calling on African nations to be united in the energy transition process.
Our view is that gas is going to be part of the transition in a big way. but we're told that any fossil fuel we must not touch. I think Africa must get together, and this conference give us that opportunity to develop a strategy to deal with this reality. Africa must seize the moment. We must indeed position Africa oil and gas at the forefront of global energy growth.
Mines and Energy Minister Tom Alwendo pointed out that while Namibia has prioritized green energy, it will not suffocate itself by cutting off potential oil and gas resources that could assist in solving socio-economic problems, calling on a global energy transition that is inclusive, equitable, and just. The executive chairman of the Mozambican Oil and Gas Chamber, Florival Mukave, pointed out that while the challenges of climate change are very real, Mozambique is one of the poorest countries in the world, sitting on third biggest gas reserves in the world.
And we know that it may not be 2050, but somewhere in the distant future, we hope, we will need to reinvest the revenues from gas in different industries. And renewables is definitely one of those industries that we must, given the fact that, you are talking about clean energy, you are talking about reducing the carbon emissions, and it's important for Mozambique. Like I said, we had 2 deadly cyclones in the last 2 years.
The former United States Special Envoy for the Sahel region in Africa, Dr. Peter Pham, says it is ironic that Africa, as the lowest contributor to the climate change, is now being asked to sacrifice the most, and that, according to Dr. Pham, is not just.
We all need to transition to a lower carbon economy, but that adjustment should occur with differentiation to states of development, differentiation to national endowments, and certainly with equity. And I think Africa has a strong case to make morally, but also a strong case to make in terms of tools of leverage.
Africa's energy gap is huge, and the UN Sustainable Development Goal number 8 states that energy poverty needs to end. And with 727 million people in Africa still making use of charcoal and wood, Africa certainly has a lot to do to achieve that goal by 2030.
Welcome back. This is Talk of the Nation. This evening, we're looking at oil in the land of the brave. Mr. Malunga, in that instant that we just saw, you spoke with such conviction that Namibia will be the next producer of oil on the African continent. Why were you so convinced?
Yeah, well, Denver, we have been doing oil exploration in Namibia, I think, for the past 30 years. And it was really just a matter of time for us to find the oil, because we've done so much. We've drilled a lot of exploration wells. I think the Namibian government, when they came in at that time, put in place a new petroleum law in 1991 already. And then I think since 1992, they managed to invite companies, international companies, to come to explore for oil and gas in Namibia. So we've done a lot of work. We have, I think as government, created an enabling environment to invite all these international companies to come. They've been coming and going, and lately, we've really done so well to retain some of these international majors who ultimately drilled more wells and discovered the oil that we're talking about. So, obviously, yes, with all these things that have been happening and maybe having a gift of foresight, it was really just a matter of time. So I knew that the oil discovery was going to be made sooner or later. And I think I was convinced in my spirit that this year was the year that we're going to discover.
Well, you have been vindicated. Let's look at that enabling environment that you said government had created. What exactly did it entail, and why was that so critically important?
It was important to lay a very strong foundation, because Namibia obviously is not the only country that invites international companies to come and explore for oil in its waters or onshore. So we are competing with other countries, obviously, and companies have a choice to make whether they're going to come to Namibia or go elsewhere. So I think what we've done successfully in Namibia is our regulatory environment and our physical environment has been so attractive. And the companies came, and although there wasn't initial success, I think they stuck around and made sure that they discovered the oil that they have now finally discovered.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Cloud, we're happy to have a representative of the ministry here this evening as well. An exclusive article by Upstream International quotes sources as describing Total Energy's ultra-deep water discovery as an elephant find. What are we to understand that to mean?
Thank you, Daniel. I think what it implies is that the discovery is quite enormous. From an industry perspective, one could easily deduct to say that it might be a commercial discovery. However, it is also very important to be cautious at this point in time because still needs to be done. There's still work that needs to be done. The operator still needs to do an appraisal program, which basically entails looking at the size and the extent of the reservoir before it can declare it as a commercial discovery.
What would amount to a commercial discovery?
Basically, it is that the capturing of the resource, the value that they are getting out will be more than what the input is from investing in that infrastructure.
In the same vein, while you have the floor, Shell Namibia has announced significant discovery of sizable quantities of light oil. What does that mean and what do we know about that find?
It means it is a discovery. It is a geological discovery. I think the same argument can also be used that I mentioned about Total to Shell. Work still needs to be done. Shell also still needs to do an appraisal program, and basically, by virtue of that, one can be able to assess and see whether the quantities are commercially viable.
I would like us to very briefly, in layperson's terms, unpack what amounts to a geological discovery so that we know what work has been done thus far already.
A geological discovery means that there's a working petroleum system. All the signs are there that there is oil or there is gas. It does not basically say that it is commercial, but it means that the resource is available and it is present. Now, doing an appraisal means now to basically determine the size and the extent of that resource in order to see whether it makes any sense financially to take out that resource and produce it.
Let's accept it's not commercial. What will then happen?
Well, if it's not commercial, there might be other options also to explore. The companies might be looking at other targets. Because what happens is that when a company, in this case, the operator might have few targets where it will, select which one to best optimize in drilling. And if that is not working out, they might move on to another target.
Very well. Thank you very much, sir. Doc, at the time of these announcements recently, you were in Europe. Talk to us about the international sentiments.
Well, I was in Norway. And as Mr. Mulunga said, it's 30 years, actually in April, since the first exploration license was issued in Namibia. And that was to a Norwegian consortium, where I was the general manager. We spent a lot of money on seismic and drilling wells and so on, but we didn't make any discoveries. None of the other oil companies did either in the 1990s. But all these people, all these companies, they were very enthusiastic and very optimistic about Namibia. We know in our industry that finding oil, making discoveries in new countries takes a lot of time. In my country, we made the first oil discovery after 37 exploration wells. That was Christmas 1969. We were not a very rich country and we had various economic issues. But after a number of years, we became the third or fourth biggest exporter of oil and gas in the world. I mean, we use very little of the oil in Norway because we are also a small country. But the point is this: Namibia has made a discovery now after 27, I think, exploration wells after independence. So I think that the people that came here in the 1990s, like me, we feel a bit vindicated. We believed in this, and we are very, very excited about what has happened.
What does that mean for you, but also what do you think it means for the Namibian people?
Well, first of all, what I think what it means for the Namibian economy is that you will see more exploration going on, because if these discoveries turn out to be commercial, it's an indication that there might even be more to be discovered in the area. So I think the exploration activity level will pick up, and the more you explore, the higher is the possibility of actually making more discoveries. More discoveries means a higher revenue to government. It will impact the finances for the state. It will boost the GDP of the country. It will create jobs directly and more so indirectly. It will be a leverage for technology and skills transfer for the country. It has an enormous potential. Back to my country, Norway, it has transformed my country. It has, small little Norway has become one of the richest countries in the world.
Based on the discovery
Yes.
in Christmas 1969.
And what came out of that.
Mr. Sankey, Recon Africa has been the focus in Namibia for quite some time now. From your perspective, from where you stand, what do you make of these developments in terms of the oil and gas industry in Namibia?
Well, an overview of the operation in the Kavango region is we've recognized a previously unrecognized sedimentary basin in northwest Botswana, northeast Namibia, with the help of a data set that the Namibian government had that helped us, once we interpreted it, it helped us identify a deep sedimentary basin up to 30,000 feet deep, and which is important. But the first important operation that we needed to conduct was to drill a couple wells in the basin to prove that there's an active working petroleum system, because there wasn't any wells in the basin. So we did that this time last year. We bought our own rig, refurbished it in the US, acclimated it for the Kalahari desert conditions, and drilled 2 wells in the first half of 2021. Fortunately, the results are positive, where we have discovered light oil and associated natural gas. But then the next operation was to shoot 2-dimensional seismic, which has never been conducted in the basin before either, to identify stratigraphic and structural features where oil and gas would accumulate, hopefully in commercial quantities. So we did that last fall, interpreted it. The results are positive, and as a result, we are now commencing 2 operations for the first half of 2022. First of all, another seismic shoot over 500 kilometers, as well as a 4 to 6 well drilling program. And the importance of this drilling program is that we're now drilling into seismically defined traps to enhance the probability of success of commerciality. So if we are successful this year, Namibia, Namco, and Recon Africa could be producing first oil in 12 to 18 months. But ultimately, how we develop the resource is going to be up to the Namibian government, because after all, it's their resource.
What are we to understand enhancing the possibility of success for commerciality to mean?
How do we define success?
Yes.
Well, it's going to be good production tests, initial success, good production tests of light oil and associated gas.
And thus far, are indications that commercial quantities exist?
Well, we have to drill it, but we're optimistic. We're optimistic. The signs are good. The seismic looks very good. It looks like a target-rich drilling environment.
Mr. Ayuk, are you there?
I am here.
Very well, sir. Now, exploration drilling, as we know, was at its lowest level ever in Africa for some time now. But Namibia's discoveries have shone a new light on this. How important is it, however, to have a long-term outlook and approach rather than a quick return in business?
Absolutely, we need to have a long-term outlook, and it's really great to see Emmanuel with bold predictions. So never count out the predictions of Emmanuel. I see Carlo being very, very careful and cautious, which that is good, sends around the right messages to the market. I think we are seeing two big high-impact wells done in Namibia already this first quarter, starting from last year with Shell and Total. That's a good thing. A lot of Africa, we are the chamber producing about 9 impact wells to come on stream across the continent. Namibia already taking 2, so it's very good. Yes, when you talk about returning to business as usual, the real question is that why not? Why shouldn't we get back in the business of producing more oil? The world is going to need more oil. The world is going to, we do recognize the issues around the transition that is around the corner. We have to pay respect to it, and we have to, but this is also an opportunity. When we talk about business as usual, we need to fast track approvals. What are you coming to do? Approving an appraisal plan and field development plans, approving 2D seismic plans, and approving if Recon comes back positive, then looking at approving exactly a field development for them to get that production in 12 to 18 months. But we cannot, I think it is almost unreasonable to expect a country like Namibia to say, give up on your oil resources and not produce them fast. I think that is unjust and it's not right.
Now, if one has regard to a long-term outlook and approach, what would be the fundamentals of such an approach?
The fundamentals of such an approach is this. We produce more oil right now. We drill more wells, but then at the same time, we diversified the economy. So looking at definitely green options. You're already doing well with a lot of what you're trying to do on the hydrogen side, but wouldn't that even be better if you're not just doing green hydrogen, but doing blue hydrogen also, and using all their resources to bring in renewables into the economy? But at the same time, you diversify the economic outlook. And even though you have just a 2 million population, now you become a supplier to the region. And I think that long-term vision has to come around. But I think especially when you talk about that vision, you got to look at your neighbors. You got to look at not just the success of Angola or Nigeria. You got to look at your mistakes and try to avoid that. But we also got to be very careful when you look at a long-term outlook in engaging in a sense of resource nationalism and really trying to have some room to build some castles in the sky. And I think I'm very happy you have Carlo and Emmanuel here. The big challenge for them would be how to manage expectations and really engage in really community outreach. You talk to citizens, don't quit your day job, don't pack what you're doing. Oil is not going to change anything. It's going to be an addition, and then you go forward with that.
Thank you very much, sir. So Mulunga, what do you make of that responsibility that both you and Mr. McLeod have to manage expectations, according to Mr. Oyuk?
Yeah. Mr. Oyuk is correct. We have a huge responsibility. And I think in any country where there's a new discovery like Namibia, you have to communicate the impact of the discovery. You need to, I think, educate as many people as possible to get to know the oil industry, because oil industry is complex. It's not as simple as a lot of people think. For example, one of the topical issues that we've been facing recently is Namco's 10% and why 10%? Why are we selling 5% from our 10% equity in the Recon license? So it's important, I think, that we basically communicate what the impact of this discovery is going to be, what the future is going to look like. Because if we don't, then there's going to be a lot of expectation, as NJ is saying, people not understanding, and that can actually be more dangerous. So we need people need to manage those expectations and make sure that we enter this phase really with sober minds.
Very well. Mr. McLeod, does the Ministry of Mines and Energy have a responsibility to manage expectations on behalf of Namibians?
That's right. Yeah, we do have. As the custodian of the natural resources and as the sector ministry, it is important for us to know how we are going to manage these expectations. It is also important that we put forth policies as well as systems in place to ensure that, when the resources are being developed and production kicks off, that, whatever revenues comes through, that there are, ways in how to, deal with it accordingly so as not to go astray, and it must always be to the benefit of the citizens.
Will it benefit the citizens while we are at it?
I believe so. It should. We do have the capacity to do so. Namibia is a resource country. We have diamonds. We have other mineral resources. We have been doing resource management quite well. And I think the same emphasis and the same endeavor can also apply to oil and gas.
So, Mlunga, you raised one of the concerns, namely that 10% stake. Please explain to us how it works in layperson's terms, bearing in mind how complex this industry is.
Yeah. Thank you, Denver, and thank you for the opportunity for me to really try and explain this to the Namibian nation, because I think as of late, after this discovery has been made, there's been a lot of noise out there, whether it's on social media or in the general press, about why 10% for Namco. I think we need to understand that oil and gas exploration doesn't just give you rights. Because a lot of people think, yes, Namco has 10%, or the fact that Namibia has discovered oil, we only have rights. There's rights and obligations. So whatever equity that you decide to take or that you are given in a license like this, you have to pay for it at some point. But we're just fortunate that the way that these transactions or these licenses have been issued is that Namcor's interest, 10%, is carried, meaning that we will not be required to spend our share of the exploration expenditure, but we will pay back that exploration expenditure, either development or production. Right? So if you expect Namco to, for example, take a 50% equity in a license, it is required from Namco to also contribute 50% of the exploration costs. And these wells or these exploration programs are very expensive. Like Shell, for example, they must have spent more than $100 million in finding that oil. So if we had 50%, we would have had to fork out $50 million. And we don't have $50 million. Neither does government has $50 million to give to Namco to contribute towards exploration costs. And you know why? It's because exploration is very expensive, obviously, as I said, number one. Number two, it's very risky. Usually when you go in a frontier area like Namibia, you have if you're lucky, a 20% chance of success or 25% of success, chance of success. So nobody in their right mind, whether it's a Namco or government, would want to risk that kind of money for exploration. So that's why when a license is issued, an agreement is already made that if a discovery is made, this is how the proceeds from the discovery are going to be distributed. Namco will have its 10%. It will get 10% of the revenues, obviously. And like everybody else in the license, in the partnership, in the joint venture, will also pay their taxes. So it's a thing of having rights and having obligations. Because I think people think that the 10% that Namco is getting is all that is the Namibian people are getting. And that's not correct.
Before we get to that, how much will Namco in the end have to fork out for that 10%?
Okay, let's make an assumption. Let's make an assumption and say maybe let's look at the Total well, for example. I mean, some people have made a study and a conclusion and said that it's going to cost probably $13 billion to actually construct the facilities that are required to extract the oil from the ground. So if it's going to cost $13 billion, it means Namco has a 10% stake. Namco will have to fork out $1.3 billion.
And where will the money come from?
Now that's a good question. So again, in the Total example, we have made the arrangement, the petroleum agreement, in such a way that Namco will only pay its share of these exploration costs and the development costs from each share of production. But with the Shell license, for example, Namco will be required in the next 2 years once we have actually done the appraisal program, for Namco to pay its share. And maybe, say for example, the Shell development cost, say it's 5 billion US dollars, for example, just to pick a number. It means we will have to come up with 500 million or 10% of that amount to actually pay our share. And in the Shell example, we are not carried up to production. We have to basically go into a bank and borrow that money so that we can pay our share. So it's a right and obligation issue. It's not only a right.
What do you make of these concerns?
Denver, I think it is very important to underscore what I'm going to say next. The public out there sees the oil and gas sector in a different light. What they see is that in this case of Namco, they assume that 5% or 10%, that is all that government stands to benefit from all this. However, that is a wrong assumption. You have to understand that there is 35% taxes that will be imposed upon a company that produces. There is also 5% royalties that is also coming to the government as a revenue stream. In addition to that, there is also what we call additional profit taxes based on, the flow of production, and then Namco's 5%. So at the end of the day, the total take to government may even go to the point of 60%, where the company can only benefit from 45%.
May being the operative word.
Yes, because these are all, let me underscore that 35% is set. You don't negotiate that. That is in the law. 5% is set also. So that itself is statutory obligations. Then there comes the additional profit tax, works on a sliding scale. Then comes Namco's 5% or 10%. So that already shows that we can exceed up to 60% of government take from a particular project, and not as the public thinks 5% or 10% to Namco.
Which are the other concerns that are being raised at the moment, and how does the Ministry of Mines and Energy intend to deal with the public's concerns? Because it could be a question of the manner in which information is relayed to them.
The oil and gas sector is a very nascent sector. It's a baby. And there are a lot of misconceptions, which is also being fueled by the outside community. I think the concern now for people is, when will we start seeing results? We have now discovered oil. When will we start seeing results? But there is a process. The process from exploration up to appraisal, development, and production, as well as then decommissioning. It's a long process. It's a value chain. So it takes a number of years. Wood Mackenzie made an estimation that the first oil from this total well may flow from 2028. We are on 2022. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Very well.
Thank
You've
you.
explained to us earlier that Namibians will certainly benefit from this. And whether it's government gets 65%, 60%, 35%, or 10%, help us understand, if I'm a Namibian citizen based in Havana watching us this evening, how will I benefit from this?
Well, that's a political question, Denver. I think we believe the leaders will be in a position to, when the revenues are coming, it will be able to utilize those revenues in such a way that it can benefit the citizens of this country. And there is also talks that a sovereign wealth fund will be established that will channel some of the natural resource revenues into that fund. Because oil and gas is a finite resources, and with energy transition also coming to play, it is important that we capture some of those revenues into that fund that will, build up to take care of future generations.
Very well.
Thank you.
Doc, the gas component, green energy and hydrocarbon make a very interesting energy mix. Talk to us about where the Kudu gas field is at the moment in terms of extracting these resources.
Well, the Kudu gas, you will remember, was discovered very many years ago in 1974. But it has never been developed for various reasons. The field is an offshore field. It's 130 kilometers from land at water depth of 170 meters. at what we call P50, the reserves are about 1.3 trillion cubic feet, which doesn't say much to most people. But it's the equivalent energy of more than 200 million barrels of oil. 200 million barrels of oil. So it's a huge amount of energy that has been laying in the ground waiting to be developed. So our plans are to produce a gas, construct a 190 kilometer long pipeline to shore, and build a power plant. This has been contemplated before, but the operator at the time were hit by the oil crisis, or the collapse of the oil prices a number of years ago. So they had to reprioritize their development programs, and their license went back to Namco, and then we came in some 4 years ago. So we have revisited their plans. We have made changes to it, and we want to develop Kudu in 2 phases. The first phase will be approximately 420 megawatts, and the second phase, another 400 megawatts. Then we have a little bit more experience with the reserves.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you very much. Should you want to participate in tonight's very important conversation, if you have a question for one of the esteemed panelists, the number to dial is 061 291 339. 061 291 339. Please remember to switch off your television set to avoid any confusion. Please keep your contributions and your questions brief and to the point and respectful throughout. Mr. Sankey, your company has been held in a lot of controversy over the past 14 months or so. What do you make of how often you come under fire?
Well, I believe that drilling onshore these days is more controversial. You're dealing with a lot more elements, a lot of stakeholder issues, etc. We've come under fire. We've made some mistakes first coming to Namibia. We've learned a lot, but very importantly, we now have assembled a very strong professional Namibian team for stakeholder relations. We're working well with the governments. Various relevant ministries are under a lot of government oversight. A lot of visits to the Kavango Basin by the government. So the operation's running pretty smoothly now.
Which mistakes did you make?
I think just not understanding how to best communicate with the stakeholders. And one good example was that we were initially advertising community town hall meetings by way of the newspaper. And we realized that that's not the most effective way to advertise. And actually in the Kavango region, radio is a better way to advertise. So that's just a good example.
Mr. Ayuk, are you there?
I am here. I can't go away.
Very well. Now, with the recent COP26 conference, there's a strong pushback against hydrocarbons and coal, with more emphasis, of course, on green energy. What do you make of that, sir?
I think the people that went to COP to do this pushback, most of them flew with airplanes. They burned more than 4,000 liters of gasoline on the air to get there, 90 cars on convoys. I think it's unfair to tell poor people living in Africa that you don't have the right to have electricity because you need clean air. We can't have clean air in the dark. Looking at what my previous panelists have said, and especially when it comes to everyday Africans right now, and Namibians rightfully questioning what they would get. But you just have to look at the focus on jobs. It's about jobs. It's about everyday people. Look at the jobs that you're going to get out of Recon, discoveries out of Shell, out of Total, because that's what goes to everyday people. I'll tell everybody watching, don't pay attention what goes to the treasury. That's for politicians to fight about. But look at the multiplier effects and the multiplier jobs as well that come with hotels and more development, social. And I think focusing on more local content, creating a base for local suppliers, that is the true nature of what we need to be looking at today instead of people sitting in other places. And I just listened to my colleague from Norway who talked about their discoveries in Christmas Day. Last month, after COP26, Norway gave 52 oil licenses and started drilling more wells. How dare you tell Namibians today, not this gentleman on TV, he's a nice guy, but how dare you tell the Namibians today that Norway just gave 52 licenses back out of oil and gas drilling because some little girl in Sweden would be angry. I think that's unfair, and it goes with the same attitude that we've seen all around the industry. I think Recon should not be attacked the way they've been attacked. Chikenke is very, very kind to apologize for some of the things. I think it should not be apologetic. There's nothing wrong in what they are doing. The science has not, the science by the environmental groups attacking Recon is wrong. The facts are wrong. They have engaged, and it's also an insult to the government that conducted so much environmental impact assessment and gave a go-ahead for them to do these activities. How dare somebody sit somewhere far away with no knowledge of the country and then just tell people who have gone through ministries and everything. Nobody loves the environment more than we do. I have seen Namibian authorities work so hard together with companies. That's why you have these discoveries today. And we don't give credit to them. It's because Namibian authorities have created a market that is welcome, but been very, very proactive to the environment because they have a long history on that because they protect their tourism and their wildlife. And do you think they will give that up today because Recon showed up? And Recon has done an amazing job. And we should not apologize for that. We should be applauding them for what they're doing in spite of their insurmountable odds that they are facing. COP26 has come and gone, and we're still facing an energy crisis after that. Now you're going to have COP27 in Africa. Now we need to be asking ourselves what we're going to do about it. So we're going to go from Cape to Cairo in Africa. But we should not try to give up Namibia's right to produce hydrocarbons, develop gas, and everything. Norway did a sovereign wealth fund in 25 years. I'm very happy Carlo is already talking about a sovereign wealth fund. They might do it in 25 days, just like Ghana did. That would be better than Norway. I think Namibia can do better than Norway. That should be the focus, and not about some girl in the Scandinavian really worried about what happens tomorrow. We don't want clean air in the dark. We want to beat energy poverty and make it history.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, be all of that as it may, how important would an oil and gas bill and ultimately an act be to ensure that the sector is regulated and ultimately to benefit the Namibian people?
It's very easy. You hold Carlo accountable today, and then you let Carlo hold Recon and Shell and Kudu and Kudu, BW accountable and Total. Create the right kind of environment post-discovery. Right now, get to the table. Local content, very important. Women in energy, very important. How do we start? Don't train people in 3, 4, or 5 years. Start training people today. Look at how you look at some of those low-tech jobs, some of the jobs that you can get Namibians to participate right now in it. You have to also start looking at how do you, again, manage information flow that goes to the population, educate your population about it. Please do not quit your day job, and because oil is here, keep up your day job, but then really ensure that we become good stewards of these resources and really start becoming proactive. Yes, there's going to be an energy transition. If we want Namibians to benefit, we fast-track approvals, we fast-track development programs, but then really we have to use Namibia to be that best case for Africa, that we say Africa's time, and there lives a country that came last, but learned from the mistakes of others, turned it around, and spoke of a history that can be done better. And that's why we all must participate in supporting Namibia. That's why we all must participate in helping them get there and not engage in the demonization of these hardworking men and women in the industry, from Recon Shell to Total.
Thank you very much, sir. We've unfortunately run out of time. From where you stand, what is the way forward?
From where I stand, what is the way forward is that we let the appraisal world happen. We continue to work with Carlo to fast track development of the industry approvals. Right now, we look at Namco to say, how do you negotiate carefully to ensure that your equity stake can either be increased, but it has to be paid. We have to really embrace market principles. But then we basically move forward. And to conclude with this, I'll be joining you in April. They wouldn't stop me. I'll be there. And we have to carry that Namibian flag. Here is a chance for us to make this industry proud and turn it around so that the people at the bottom can be put on top. This is a time for us to make a little guy the big guy. Let us not miss this opportunity for this great country. And there's so much hope in the air. And I do pray and I hope that with these brilliant people, Namibia would get it right. And we will, at the chamber, will be right here marshalling resources all over to make sure that they are successful. But this is time for us to rally around this country and give it the support we need. Let's not miss this opportunity.
Mr. Ayuk, thank you very much for your time and thank you for sharing your expertise this evening.
Thank you so much. Such an honor to be here, and God bless you.
Thank you. Mrs. Sankey, what is the way forward from your perspective?
For onshore production?
From the perspective of Recon Africa, how will you ensure that whatever it is that you do will benefit the Namibian people and that the resource is used to the benefit of the Namibian people?
Well, what we need to do is we need to establish commercial production. We're not there yet. This drilling program in 2022 is very important to help us establish that or not. Now, if we're successful and can establish it, what it's going to mean, well, I'm sure you're familiar with the Kavango region, Kavango East and West. It's a poor region. It's going to provide, we're already providing jobs just in the exploration phase. We've already hired over 500 people, drilling a lot of water wells. There's a definite need for an abundant or access to water, and not only access to water, but safe access to water. I think we're all aware that accessing water by way of the Kavango River is very dangerous. So anyway, there's a lot of benefits other than just producing oil and gas that we can provide in the Kavango Basin.
And what's going to happen if we find that it's not of commercial value? Will you up and leave?
Well, it would be pretty hard to go on if it's not commercial, definitely.
Thank you. Doc, how will we ensure that we become and stay good stewards of this resource?
Well, we work very closely with the government and within the parameters set by the government of Namibia. We have a very good partner in Namco. But our contribution to how will Kudu benefit people is that, you know, more than 60% of the electricity consumed here comes from abroad. We import electricity from countries who have load shedding every day. And a lot of the electricity that we import is based on coal. So they are burning coal in other countries to provide us with electricity here. So the Kudu gas will replace imported electricity. The emission levels of CO2 from gas is 50% of that of coal. So that's a contribution also to the transition away from coal to cleaner electricity that we see all over the world. Gas plays an important role. So we will help to secure a reliable and safe electricity supply situation for this nation. That is a main contribution. And then, of course, we will be a happy taxpayer and employer in Namibia.
Thank you very much. Mr. McLeod, you and the ministry have your work cut out for you, it would seem. From where you sit, what is the way forward? And how will you ensure, and we will hold you accountable, that the average Namibian benefits from this?
I think, thank you, Denver. I think my brother, Dr. Ayuk, has articulated quite well. And that actually resonates to what we are trying to achieve at the moment. We have a local content policy that is in the final stages for approval. It will be tabled to Cabinet soon. However, this local content policy addresses a host of issues, issues that speaks to backward and forward linkages, issues that will address skills transfer and knowledge transfer, issues that will talk about transfer of ownership, as well as local participation. So there is a number of issues that this policy will be looking into with the idea of making sure that the Namibian citizens are benefiting from this resource.
Thank you very much. It's unfair of you to introduce new evidence at this juncture, but I think that policy warrants a follow-up conversation.
Thank you.
Sir. Mr. Mulunga, you have the final word this evening.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that final word, Denver. I think from a Namco perspective, we just want to express our gratitude to the Namibian government for obviously allowing us to have a 10% stake in these licenses, because we have to make it clear that a 10% stake is nowhere in law that Namco must have a 10% stake. I remember very well, I think about 10 years ago, Minister Erking Mtina, when he was the Minister of Mines and Energy, he made it an unofficial policy for Namco always to have a 10% stake. So we are not entitled to any stake. In many countries, whether it's in the UK, many developed countries, national oil companies don't have a stake. Government relies on taxes and royalties. So we are happy that the Namibian government had that foresight to actually create a very strong national oil company. And we believe in the next 10 years or so, Namco will be a formidable national oil company on the African continent.
You will see to it.
Yes. Yes.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Let's ensure that the average Namibian does in fact benefit from this resource.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end. Thank you, sir. And that brings us to the end of this week's edition of Talk of the Nation. We will be back next week, same time, same place. Have a safe week. Goodbye.